प्रतिबोधितां
Bhagavata Narayan
Narayan
Swayam. Jyoti, if you can mute everybody, please.
Yep.
Then there's no echo. You can all sing, but then if it's on mute, then no echo. Okay. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvarshini Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayini Amutvam Anusandhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namo Astu Te Vyas Vishal Buddhe Pul Arvind Ayat Patra Neta Yen Tavya Bharat Tail Purnaha Prajwalito Gyanmaya Pradeepa परपान पारी जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पानये ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाये गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्ये ग्राहवती कृपेन वाहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवैरन्नदी क्यवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलं गीता अर्थगंधोटकम् नानाख्यानक केसरम हरिकथा संबोधन अबोधितम् लोके सज्जन षटपदे रह ते पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिं यत्कृपातमं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम् यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदे सांग पद क्रम उपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थे तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. We are on chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga. And we saw how beautifully Lord Krishna has defined Kshetragya, Prakriti, Purush, Gyan, the knowledge, all of it. And this knowledge that Lord Krishna is talking about is not just a bookish information, but it is a realized wisdom. That's why now in the verse which we are going to enter into, he will give us some practices to do, practical application, okay? Which are called sadhana, spiritual practices. For a different level of student, see, just like in schools also, there were some very serious students. They wanted to make sure that they are on the top of the class or they get A and A pluses. And there were some students, they just only wanted to pass. That was good enough for them. Over here also, Lord Krishna understands that there are all kinds of minds. Okay. So let's look at number 25. What is he telling us? ध्यानेन आत्मनि पश्यन्ति केचित् आत्मनम् आत्मना अन्ये सांख्येन योगेन कर्म योगेन च अपरे. ध्यानेन, by meditation. Atmani, in the self. Pashyanti, beholds. Kechit, some. Atmanam, the self. Atmanaha, by the self. Anya means others. Sankhyen yogen, by the yoga of knowledge. Karam yogen, by karam yoga. Cha means and, apare means others. So he's saying some by meditation. Behold the self in the self by the self. We have learned about this earlier also. This is self, each self has a different meaning. Self word is used to indicate something in us. Others by the yoga of knowledge, Gyan Yoga, and others by Karam Yoga. Various roads all converging at the same goal. Each path, see, these are different paths. Each path is the fittest for the one who's walking it. And no path can be said nobler than the other path. As long as you keep on walking on your path, you will reach there. And the difference between the various seekers is the difference in their mental equanimity and intellectual equipment at that particular time. So-called lesser paths are mainly meant for purifying the inner equipment. Inner equipment means mind and the intellect. When mind becomes steady and concentrated, when the intellect is redeemed from its wasteful habits of wrong imaginations, then that particular equipment is ready for higher flights, which is called the path of meditation. You are sitting, full control over your body and full control over your mind and intellect. You can absorb your lower self into the higher self. And lower self could be the mind also, lower self is ego also. You just absorb that into the higher self. And that's what it's meant over here, by the self into the self. See, all that inner equipment, but only if the inner equipment is in our control and if it's clean. So that's why the lesser paths, which he's talking about, whether it's a Karam Yoga or whether it's a Gyan Yoga, you are working on these equipments of yours so that ultimately you can merge. Okay? So in other words, we must have a dynamic head and heart for this flight. And this behold word, behold does not mean to see the self as an object. This behold is used here only an inward experience of a total subjective rediscovery. It's not that self is coming from somewhere else, it's already there. But you have never, or we have never paid attention to it. We were so preoccupied with the circumstances around or with the conditions of the body or other equipments which we have, never paid attention to the real thing, who we are. So this is what behold means. And this experience becomes so vivid that it becomes a very unshakable knowledge for us. When we can say that I behold, okay, that nothing can be shaken up. It's objectively, we see ourselves as we are. Otherwise, we are seeing ourselves with the mirror of our mind. Sometimes we like ourselves, sometimes we don't like ourselves, sometimes we think we are better than others. Sometimes we think that we are lesser than ours, what we are. But when we behold ourselves, then we know objectively who we are. And this is what Lord Krishna is telling us. But he understands. All the saints and the sages, they understand that variety is the universal characteristic of God's creation. Because even the minds also, the intellects also, the bodies also, they are made out of the Prakriti. And who created the Prakriti? God did. And there is a variety. Just like no two leaves on any tree are alike. No two human beings have exactly the same fingerprints. No two human societies have the same features. So that's why these rishis, they said, ultimately, definitely you will behold. When you behold yourself, then it's all the same. But before you reach there, you have to take a certain path. And make sure, choose the path wisely and stay on the path. Okay? But we have to combine it with the devotion. Whether we are on a Karam Yoga path or a Jnana Yoga path, but the devotion have to be there. The fulfillment of any endeavor involving knowledge, action, love, etc., it will take us to that climax only when it's combined with devotion. Devotion means pleasure for God. Okay, so path of knowledge, path of meditation, and path of action. And if you look at it, the noblest, the sattvic qualities will let us do meditation very effortlessly. And we can see it in ourselves also. From day to day, from time to time, we see some days we can meditate effortlessly. When this body is not sick, when we are breathing properly, when there's no issue going on in our personal life also, when we are not worried about the worldly circumstances, we can very easily meditate. So this is more sattvikta in us. The sattvic food we have eaten, when we are sticking to our daily routine, it's very easy to meditate. Automatically, you will just go into that place. So seekers with the noblest sattvic qualities, they will meditate automatically. The seekers with a slight sattvic temperament, but with a large share of agitations, they will have to make some effort to still their mind. They cannot just go into that place right away. They'll have to make an effort. They are still on the path of perfection, but effort is needed. And the people who are still churning quite a bit, there are a lot of mental oscillations created by the vasanas. Oscillation is always because of the vasanas, disturbances. They must follow the karma yoga. Do some seva. My own Guruji used to say, if there is any kind of there were quite a few girls in our family. So if there is any kind of a quarrel between the sisters, instead of sitting and meditating, go do the dishes. Do some seva. So with your own hands, when you are doing the seva, your mind will calm down. And the same thing we can do now too, when we are old. Because there may not be a quarrel at the outer level, but there's always some kind of agitation which can go on. So keep your body busy. But remember God at that time too. Because when we remember God, only then it becomes a seva. Otherwise, it's not. So he's talking about the Dhyan Yoga, the Gyan Yoga, and the Karma Yoga. Okay. So, and what path is prescribed for those who are steeped in tamas? Because this is predominantly sattvic, some sattvikta and rasikta, and lot of rajasikta. But then there's a third category also, which is tamsikta. What should those people do? Or what should we do when we are very tamsic? Because we go through all these three all the time too. अन्ये तु एवम् अजानन्तः श्रुत्वा अन्येभ्य उपासते ते अपि च अतितरन्ति एव मृत्युम श्रुति प्रायना. अन्ये, others. Tu means indeed, evam means thus, ajanantah, not knowing, shrutva, having heard, anyebhya, from others, upasate, worship. Te means they, api also, cha means and, atitaranti, cross beyond. Ev means even, mrityum, death, shruti parayana, regarding what they have heard as their supreme refuge. Others also. So that means the people who don't belong to those first three categories, or if your mind doesn't belong in any given day according to those three categories, at that time, not knowing this, worship, having heard of it from others, they too cross beyond death if they would regard what they have heard as their supreme refuge. Heard from others. In the Vedic tradition, hearing from the saints has been highly emphasized as a powerful tool for spiritual elevation. That's where the Kathavachaks, that's where all kinds of temples, they have discourses, hearing from others. When we hear from a proper source, the key word is a proper source. We have faith in that person, and that faith, the person also has unconditional love for us also. Okay, there's no any other motive behind. So when we hear from a proper source, what happens? We develop authentic knowledge. Authentic knowledge about spirituality. The source has to be right. The intention behind that person giving us the knowledge has to be at a higher level too. And then another thing, there has to be enthusiasm in that person who's teaching us. Because that saints or the gurus or the teachers or the speakers or the priests, enthusiasm we catch. And that's how our faith develops. It's just like if one log is in the fireplace and it's burning, you put another log close to it. Even a wet log, if you put close to it, first it will dry, then it will catch fire too. This is what happens when we are in the company of a saintly person who has the authentic knowledge and who has a sattvic intention also. So we catch enthusiasm and we develop a faith in our heart, because these are the foundation stones for devotion. Enthusiasm. If we do it mildly, our practice, it's not going to take us far. Mildly, we have been doing it. Off and on, we have been doing it. But now we have to, Lord Krishna is telling us to develop a little fire inside you. Okay, so if the path of action, seva we cannot do. Gyan we really doesn't seep in, just be in the company of somebody. Listen to somebody, but with a faith in it. And what does it mean that they too go beyond death? Does it mean that they don't die ever? This phenomena of death we have to understand. Right now what we think, we are the body and body will die. But then we start identifying ourselves with that part in us which never dies. So that's what means they too go beyond death. Okay? They understand that essence, the Purusha, the soul, the self never dies. See, right now we are sleeping towards that reality. But when we again and again hear, when we again and again meditate on it, that just becomes our reality. It's not just a theoretical some verses for us. And that's why he's emphasizing it over here. So, Mrityum Shruti Parayana. And through these various paths available to us, what exactly is the ultimate goal? Why do we need to walk on these paths? Why do we need to go to somebody? Why do we need to do sadhana? Lord Krishna says in number 27, Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavar jangamam kshetragye sanyogat tatvidhi bharat rishabh. Yavat, whatever. Sanjayate is born. Kinchit, any. Sattvam, being. Sathavar jangamam, the unmoving and moving. Kshetragya sanyogat, from the union between the field and the knower of the field. Or you can say Prakriti and the Purush. Tat means that, Vidhi means know, K-N-O-W. Bharat Rishabh, or best of the Bharats. That is it. He's saying it to Arjuna. Whenever any being is born, the unmoving or the moving, know you, O best of the Bharats, that it is from the union between the field and the knower of the field. Wherever consciousness exists, there must be the presence of the soul. Without it, there can be no consciousness. Sometimes we disregard that, or most of the time we disregard that. So he says, when you are walking on this path, you are more and more aware of it. Wherever there's a consciousness, wherever you see the life, there is a soul also. Prakriti, sure we can see, but it is a union of the soul and the matter. So consciousness is there. We see life, consciousness in the trees also, plants also, creepers also, animals also. Some of them move, some don't move, but we see the growth. There are some plants, when you touch them, they shrink, they close. They are so sensitive to the touch, they close down. Are we aware of that? Do we pay attention to that? You remember what did Mata Sita, what did she say to Lava and Kush? They were supposed to bring some wood from the jungle for the kitchen also and for the Havan also, so that Rishi Valmiki could do the Havan. And those brothers, they cut the green tree. And Mata Sita very nicely told them, Never cut a live plant. There's a life in it. You are supposed to gather only the dry wood which is fallen on the ground. Tree has given that to us so that we can use it. When we cut a tree, we are hurting the tree. So this is the plants we are talking about. At least we can bring some of this knowledge in our day-to-day life. That's why there are certain people, they follow routinely this discipline, that anything which is fallen from the tree, the fruit fallen from the tree, they'll eat. Fruit or vegetable. Where the tree has to die to feed us, they won't even eat that. So they go to that level. And even on the tree, they say when you touch it and it just falls in your hand. Rather than pulling and plucking and putting into the storage, we have hurt the tree. And that's why we don't get proper nourishment either. So all those ideas are in the scriptures. So whatever level we want to go into. So, but he says, whenever any being is born, the unmoving or the moving, sometimes we think if somebody is moving, there is a life. Unmoving also. He says, it is from the union between the field and the knower of the field. Matter and energy. Combination of matter and spirit is not an accomplished union, but it is only a mutual superimposition. That also we learn from there. Okay? And we'll talk about that later on. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parmeshwaram vinashyatsu avinashyantam yapashyati sapashyati. So this self, the soul, which is the substratum of a given Purusha and Prakriti, is itself the one self everywhere. That's what he's telling us. Samam means equally, sarveshu in all, bhuteshu in beings, tishtantam existing. Parameshwaram, the Supreme Lord, Param Ishwar. Vinashyatsu, among the perishing. Avinashyantam, the unperishing. Ya means who? Pashyanti sees. Sa pashyati, he sees. So in this verse actually, basically he's saying that it's not enough to see presence of the soul within your body or within somebody else's body. We must also appreciate that God, the Supreme Soul, is seated within all bodies. All bodies, without exception. He sees who sees the Supreme Lord existing equally in all beings. Again, the key word is equally. There is no bigger or smaller God or bigger or smaller soul. So he sees who sees the Supreme Lord existing equally in all beings. The unperishing within the perishing. And we know what is perishing. Perishing is the body, the kshetra. Unperishing is the kshetragya. Okay, so substratum or the soul, self, which is supporting all of it, which he is calling it here Supreme Lord, it remains the same in all beings. This is the absolute truth. That changeless platform in the changing Prakriti. There is a changeless, something is changeless. And we can see changing only when we can understand the changeless. Eko deva sarvabhuteshu buddha sarvvyapi sarvabhut antaratma. This is from an Upanishad. God is one. Eko deva. God is one. He resides in the hearts of all. He is omnipresent. He is the supreme soul of all soul. Parameshwar. See, just like gold in all the ornaments made of the gold, the substratum is gold. No matter how many times we change it, still it's a gold. How we mold it, whether we make a chain out of it, whether we make a bangle out of it, it's still the gold. The same thing over here. This is a spiritual realization. And when he talks about it, ya pashyati, sa pashyati. That means a person who has the realization. See, just like a realization of the physical world is recognized and perceived through our physical equipment. Just like eyes can only see, eyes cannot hear. The same way, so the physical things get perceived through the physical equipment. Emotions in the world around us are felt and recognized by our minds. And the world of ideas, where does that come from? We comprehend all that by intellect. So there is a proper equipment for the proper understanding. But how do we really understand? How do we really see this Atma? How do we understand that there is a Kshetrajna in us? Because he's saying he alone sees. Who sees? How do we see it? And that those are the practices he talked about earlier. Dhyan yoga. If we cannot do the dhyan, then gyan. If we cannot really study, we don't have that kind of intellect yet or liking, karam. If we cannot do the karam yoga, at least follow somebody, listen to somebody. Give some amount of your time attentively listening and making some change. And then we'll see that slowly we'll see who we are. That is the goal. Okay? So because most of us know this, but we haven't seen it. Whether we use the word behold or pashyati, it's like a experience of this which is unshakable. Unshakable. And then what happens if we have experienced it? He says, samam pashyan hi sarvatra, sam avastitam ishwaram, na hinasti atmanaha, atmanam tataha yati param gatim. Samam equally, pashyan seeing, he indeed sarvatra everywhere. So not just only the beings moving and unmoving, even between them also. Some of astitam, equally dwelling, Ishwaram, the Lord. Na hinasti. Hinasti means destroys. Na means not, will not destroy. Atmana, by the self. Atmanam, the self. Tataha, then. Yati goes. Param, the highest. Gatim, the goal. This is the way to go to that highest goal, where we are supposed to go. That is our purpose of coming into this beautiful human body, to attain that goal. So he is telling us what we are supposed to attain, how to attain it at every level of our personality. Where can we find a teacher like this, who has really opened it for us? What to do and what not to do. He says, indeed, he who sees the same Lord everywhere, equally dwelling. What happens to that person? Destroys not the self by the self. And we got to understand what this self he's talking about. One time he says a self is the Atma. The other time he's saying this self is the ego. With our own little ego, we forget who we are. When we boast that we have a beautiful body or I have achieved so much, we are killing our ego actually, killing our Atma or awareness of the Atma. Atma doesn't get killed, but we are not aware of it. So that's what he means over here, that destroys not the self. A person who sees God everywhere, equally dwelling, will not kill. That means will not be not aware of it. Therefore, he goes to the highest goal. Such a simple task actually, because he has really cleared it up for us beautifully. So to rediscover the spiritual reality in and through all these changes. And changes are what we go through, the agitations, those are the changes. He says that kind of an individual no more suffers, no more. Okay, so he destroys not the self by the self. That means he does not destroy the ultimate reality. And we learned about this. I would like you to go back to chapter 6. Study it again, verse number 5 and 6. In chapter 6, that's where he told us how to meditate, why to meditate, and what else to do when you are a serious meditator. Okay, so chapter 6. And I'm sure you all remember the name of that, Atam Sanyam, chapter 6. Okay, so whenever the lower egocentric individuality is not available by the higher principle of wisdom in ourself, the lower becomes our enemy. That's why he says you got to destroy it. You got to not identify with the lower, with the small I. This is the wisdom we need to cultivate. Just like when the vehicle is not in our control, we cannot enjoy our ride and we will not reach towards the destination either. The vehicle. Okay. So, and he says this kind of a person will go to the highest goal. Agyan has been removed. See, when there is a agyan, the ignorance, what happens? Our life is full of sensuality, materialistic pursuits, selfish satisfactions. So life's purpose is only in the outer world. So we have not really paid attention to the real goal of life. We are away from Gyan. So mind is pleasure seeking. See, by nature, mind is pleasure seeking because mind is made out of Prakriti. It is a product of the material energy. That's why we got to always understand this mind is our servant, not our boss. It's made out of Prakriti. So keep that in mind. Or keep the mind in check with the help of the intellect. Even though intellect is also made of Prakriti, but intellect we got to, it's higher than the mind. It's closer to the Atma. It's subtler than the mind. So mind should be checked by the intellect. And intellect should be under the guidance of the higher intellect, which is called Pragya. So that's why we do this Swadhyaya, so that our intellect keeps on heightening. So intellect needs to be empowered with the true knowledge. That's why scriptural studies are recommended on a daily basis, not just once in a while. We don't study the scriptures so that we gain some material gain. Sometimes people say, no, I'm going to read the whole Ramayana so that my son gets married or I get a grandson. Scriptures are not for that. Scriptures are for the higher knowledge so that we know who we are. Okay? So those who learn to see as the supreme soul present in all beings, they begin to live their life with this knowledge. We see the change in their actions. We see the change in their behavior. They naturally refrain from mistreating others. Because they are saying God and the other person. How can they mistreat somebody? They will refrain from cheating. They will refrain from insulting. Because sometimes we just end up insulting people. So higher knowledge will make us refrain from this. They perceive the presence of God in everybody. They maintain a healthy attitude of respect and service towards others. Wherever they get an opportunity, they would rather serve than be served. They elevate their mind by seeing God in all beings and finally reach the supreme goal. That's what Lord Krishna is telling us. So this is our goal. While living on this earth in a beautiful body, in comfortable homes, this is the change we need to bring in our personalities. With the help of the knowledge that God is everywhere. At least try to see the God in human beings. If you cannot see in the plants and the animals right now, see it in human beings. Visualize in the person you are living with. In spite of the gender or the age. The same God in a baby, same God in an elderly person. Same God in the man, same God in the woman. There's no many types of gods out there. So we'll stop the class right here. I wanted to finish the whole chapter, but I think next week maybe we can finish it. So now let's stop it here. And if there's a question, for 10 minutes, we'll just go through the questions. I think Jyoti will.
Raj Mittal, she has a question, Raj.
Yes, Raj.
Yeah. Firstly, on the last one, the one that we were just doing, first line where he says, Sarvatra Samvasthitam. So does that mean only in the beings or anywhere in the universe?
Everywhere. Sarvatra means everywhere. Samavasthitam means equally dwelling. Okay. So that means no place. First he said in the living, moving or unmoving. Now he says everywhere. He's taking our attention even beyond the beings.
Yes.
Everywhere. Okay, so that's what it is.
Okay.
Sarvatra means everywhere.
Urmil
Yes.
Paula. Urmil.
Yes, Urmil.
You have to unmute yourself.
Urmil, unmute, please. Unmute.
You have to unmute.
Okay. In the second line of verse 29, when it says, Hinashti Atmana Atmanam,
yes,
degrade by one's mind the self. What is the one's mind and the self? I got lost between Atman and Atman.
Okay, all right. The first Atmanaha, that is by the self. Okay, Na hinasti. That means that person does not destroy. Atmana, by the self. So that means the ego. And then Atmanam, the self, that is the Atma. That is the soul.
Okay, so he does not
Destroy.
degrade the Atma by himself.
Yeah, by the, if you want to just everyday words, he does not destroys the Atma, the soul, by the ego.
Oh, one's mind means ego.
Mind means ego over here, yes.
Okay,
Because ego is the one which forgets.
Okay.
Ego says, oh, I am the biggest. So it disregards. So over here, killing means disregarding. It's like a son disregarding the father in the family. Thinks that I am more powerful. Okay? So Atma does not get killed, but for that person not paying attention to the Atma is it killing the Atma in this philosophical sense.
So what it is that the intellect blocks, when he has got a better brain or an intellect, he is able to block the degradation of his soul, and the instrument or the equipment with which he can block it is the ego.
Yeah.
So the empowered intellect blocks the degradation of soul by the ego.
Yeah, you can say it that way, yeah. Because that's why the intellect comes into the picture. We got to keep on adding the knowledge or the wisdom into the intellect so that we can see it better. That we are the Atma, not the physicality of this existence. Okay? Yeah. Anybody else?
That's it. No.
Hersh, I had a question.
Okay, who wants to? Okay, Pramila?
Yeah, I had this question. I think while you were giving the lecture, you said, destroys not the self, not aware of going to the highest goal, spiritual. I lost it at that time.
Which verse you are talking about?
The 28, 13:28.
Oh, okay, 28, okay.
Just explain a little bit more on that. I did not.
So 28 says, he sees who sees the Supreme Lord existing equally in all beings.
Okay.
All beings. The unperishing within the perishing.
Okay.
So perishing is what? The matter. Matter in us is perishing. The body is perishing. But there is a unperishing in the body, which is the soul.
Okay.
So he says, a person who can see that, visualize that, experience that, is truly seeing it.
Okay.
So with the practice, that's what we need to pay attention to. Okay. So equally in all beings, that is a key word over here. Equally in all beings. See, in this 28, he's talking about the beings. In the next verse, he says, even without the beings, everywhere. See, right now we can say, yeah, Atma in you and Atma in me, that is a part of God. But then in between also there's a Atma. There's no being here. We don't see any being in between, but God is still there. There's no God is not. Okay. That's why they say that if somebody, you remember that example I often give you, that students, little kids, they were given bananas by the teacher. And the teacher said, go eat, that nobody can see you. So everybody went here and there. They all ate with nobody. But one boy brought the banana back. So everybody laughed at him. How come you didn't eat your banana? He said, I couldn't find a place. Wherever I went, God was there watching me. So God is always watching us. So if we can remember it, can you imagine how our action will improve? How our thoughts will improve? How our life will become beautiful? Right? So this is what he is telling us. Okay.
So, okay.
So anybody else? Sujata?
Thank you, Hersh.
Yes, Pramila.
I think we are good, Hersh. Kirtan?
We are good. No more questions? Yeah. I know this format, we are not used to it. I'm not used to it either, believe me. I'm used to teaching where I can see you guys, talk to you, and you can interrupt me anytime you want to. Because I don't mind interruptions. But since we are being recorded and we want to make sure that anybody, even afterwards, when they listen to it, they get something out of it. That's the only idea. So that's why we came up with this format. After 45 minutes, 10 minutes of question answers, and then chanting. Okay.
You
So,
read my mind. I was wondering why we stopped at 11:15, and you answered my question. You just
see, that doesn't mean I'm in your mind, but but I know we did not explain it earlier like this. So we were thinking that because first we thought that, oh, maybe 2-3 months we'll teach like this. But now as we are getting the information, it might go on for another year or so. So we got to make sure that we are doing a good job. And these recordings are, if somebody listens to it afterwards, they should get something out of it too. That's the whole idea. Okay. Some classes we do go like a portion by portion, like a Tuesday we read Ramayan. So after each chapter we stop and then we take the question answers. We're going to do that because I think it's very hard to just memorize everything and then at the end after 45 minutes. But this Gita, I think we'll see how it works. So it's your class. If you don't like it, something, let me know. Because somebody told me, they called me, they said, Tuesday class, do not change. That's my class. I said, okay, I'll like, that is your class. You will not change. So it's important to me. I think it's very good that you all feel that these are your classes. This is your ashram. And it is your ashram. So and
Please do
ashram's
not stop.
main goal is that we keep on learning and keep on becoming better and better. That is the whole idea, right?
Please do not stop these classes.
Huh?
Please do not stop these classes.
No, Sonia, we won't. We won't. I mean, you are
Yes.
making an effort to be with us from India. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no, and at night also, I mean, it's late over there. So, but we will definitely continue. Definitely.
Thank you so
we
much.
share something.
First chanting.
Yes. Sujata has something. Yes, Sujata.
I was going to say that I've been reading the Gita with you for so many years, and we always read the Gita Dhyanam. And inadvertently, without trying, I've memorized it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
that is the power of practice.
and
Wow.
without trying. And what I found is that it's a good aid for meditation. And I wanted to share that. It's when we're having trouble concentrating, if you start reciting something like this that you know, it automatically shuts off other
Yeah,
thoughts.
it just brings your mind into a good focus. Good
I
focus.
wanted to share that. And
Thank you, Sujata. Thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, your practice, you guys are putting your heart and soul and time into it. So, Manny, do you have a chanting for us?
Should I begin then?
Yeah, you can begin, and while you are either before or after, I can do that to Purnamada.
Okay,
What do
you
you
can
think?
do it first if you want to. Okay.
Okay, let me do it, and then meanwhile you can just find your chanting button. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate Om Shanti 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 Om.
Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna